Once upon a dream, interlude. Many people were dying. As midnight approached, first one and then another, court noble, suddenly began to start bleeding. They thrashed and grasped and choked like fish thrown out on dry land. Fauna and Merryweather flew around, frantically trying to tend to them, staunching the wounds with clean bandages here, trying a healing spell there. Nothing worked, and sometimes all it seemed to do was prolong their agony. Flora stayed as calm as she could in the midst of it, hovering in the air, willing the universe to help her as she tried to reach Rose again. She had broken off a piece of her soul and sent it to the sleeping nether realm Maleficent ruled. It was a terrible place, this inside of her adopted niece's head, with the evil fairy running rampant in it. The sleeper tossed and turned and moaned because of whatever had happened in there, and her pricked finger had started bleeding again. Flora bounced through dream forests and nightmare castles, fogs of worry and large blank places of stark depression and madness. The golden sparks that represented her loosely held together consciousness, barely glittering in the gloom and blanketed world. Only later, when she had time, would she think about her poor Briar Rose and how it was possible that none of them had seen this darkness within their adopted daughter. Now, however, this was the time to act. She felt the tether tying her to the real world grow taut and thin. She couldn't go much farther. She urgently flung out her consciousness, looking for something, anything that could help. But all she could see was murky, worthless gloom, and confused shadow people whose spirits were entirely enslaved to Maleficent's spell. There, up ahead, another consciousness, not as bewitched by the false world around it, not entirely coherent either, but it would have to do. It was aware of itself and seemed more than harmless. It seemed like a friend. You! Help her! The soul spun around in a tizzy, looking for the source of the communication. Find her! Aurora ordered frantically. She is that way. Golden sparkles aligned themselves in the direction of the blackest part of the world, and the deepest part of Rose's mind, the place Flora couldn't go. Your release. Everyone's freedom depends on it. Help her escape. Help her find us. And then, like a wet stocking pulled too tightly on the clothesline, the strongest of the three fairies was pulled back, painfully and quickly, to the waking world. Flora! She opened her eyes, torn between fury and worry. Her cohorts were unlikely to have summoned her for anything that wasn't important. Merryweather had her by the arm, and was already dragging her. Her eyes were bright, fairy tears sparkling and sharp, coursed down her cheeks. It's them this time, she cried. Oh, Flora, she's got them! Not wanting to believe what she suspected, Flora let herself be led into the throne room. There, Fauna was hysterically flittering from king to queen, who just scant minutes earlier had been peaceful and sleeping in their giant seats. Now they shivered and convulsed like rag dolls as blood poured out of their hearts. But why? Flora cried. She doesn't need them. In life, King Stephen was both a good king and a faintly humorous man, with his droopy mustache and calm demeanor. Now he rocked and heaved inhumanly, his long face pale, his skin ashen and waxy. The heavy state robes he wore in anticipation of the royal wedding day were thrashed into rags as he tried to escape his own death in his sleep. And Queen Leah, her mouth twitched and pulled from side to side like a hideous puppet's, her sad, peaceful features melting and expanding with depression. It had been terrible to watch the others be killed this way, but the fairies had known the king and queen since long before they had taken the throne. These humans and their daughter, whom the fairies had watched over, were the closest things to children they had ever had. So they might be forgiven for missing a few tiny sounds, easily lost in the calamity of the sleeping castle, but surely audible to the ears of the fairy. The sound of stone cracking, the sound of shards falling away, tinkling like glass. The sound of triumphant black wings stretching out of their stony prison. The crackling caw of an evil fairy's raven, taking a flight to discover what had become of his mistress. Her power was growing, and the raven was flying home.